Cool. So, hi everyone. I'm RG, and I'll be talking about on-chain reputation mechanics. So essentially, taking pieces from some of the things that Matt talked about and Simon touched on, and hopefully, I can also answer some of the contentious points about doing, these complex off-chain KYC, which doesn't work for, a lot of people. So to start with, I think in the year and a half that I've been here, I've kind of observed this trilemma for Phil Plus, where we kind of when we started out with kind of focusing on scalability, and we let loose compliance and decentralization. In earlier in February this year, we started to focus on compliance, where we doubled down, and kind of depending on who you ask, we might have made some progress or no progress on compliance. But then, of course, scalability took a hit, and then decentralization, of course, took a hit because from what we saw with the most recent discussions and proposals, there were a lot of questions and discussions about the Phil Plus team being centralized and whatnot. And so I think instead of going through these circles, or I guess through like point to point on this triangle, I think we need to come up with like a way in which we can tackle all three. And so kind of what I'm going to present, hopefully address, is one potential solution to address this trilemma. So broadly speaking, FilPlus uses compliant deal making to define usefulness. And today we use three overarching criteria. One is deal distribution, the other is retrievals. Of course, if that's based on if the client said that they were going to have the data retrievable. And then we're looking for consistency in the application. So things like if it's the amount of data cap that the client is asking, does it make logical sense? Or the information outlined in the application is consistent with their actual use of data cap. But what happens is, because of this criteria, it leaves a lot of room for subjectivity, which I think in the start was good because we wanted subjectivity and notaries to come in and to address that subjectivity. But I think what we've seen as the system has evolved and scaled is that subjectivity might not always be as good. And especially when notaries are having to be enforcers and auditors for compliance to de-risk a given application. And so, sometimes, the subjectivity can lead to pretty extreme, comments and outcomes in the community. And so we want to avoid that. So the big question that we're trying to answer here is, how might we design a system that can enable clients to earn on-chain reputation and leverage that reputation to get their first and consequent tranches of data cap? So that is to say that the client does not or will not ever have to engage with like external KYC, and can they earn reputation within kind of the FilPlus system, and kind of accreditably earn that reputation over time. So the design proposal here is broadly, it looks like what you see on the screen. So reputation is defined as a combination of client trust and client risk, where trust is a measure of compliance and risk is a predictive measure of non-compliance. So today, as I'll talk, the way we are hoping to define risk is, the way risk is defined today is mostly through guesswork by notaries and active community members. So someone might come and say that, oh, I think that this client is using VPNs, so they are abusive, or they're high risk. Or someone might say that, oh, I think this client is working with XYZ notaries, and I think because of the notary's past behavior, they are high risk, right? So there's a lot of guesswork involved. But if you were to take a more objective approach to define client risk, it could look as such. It could be a combination of collaboration, so who they work with, which is directly relevant to Matt's talk earlier, where we can do interesting pattern analysis and see, determine a client's risk by the SPs, data preparers, and other allocators and other stakeholders in the network they hope to work with, plus quality usage of data cap. And then client trust today looks like we mostly depend on these two bots, which is the CID checker bot and the retrieval bot. But in the future, client trust can be a combination of different compliance mechanisms plus compliance requirements set by the data cap allocator. So just to kind of go back to this slide, we're talking about client, like the end goal is to determine client reputation and give out data cap based on that reputation metric. And reputation is a function of trust and risk. So I'll kind of be jumping into the trust and risk part more. So just to I think ideally it'll be a more complex kind of scoring of what the risk would be. But if we were to essentially look at this, a high risk client can be categorized as someone who has a high risk collaboration. So that is to mean that the SPs that they work with and the notaries that they work with are considered high risk, and their usage of data cap is of poor quality. And I'll dive into what that means and so on. So medium risk is defined as high risk collaboration plus high risk quality, and then low risk client is defined as low risk collaboration plus high quality. Just want to make sure, at least in this design, compliant deal making is not quality usage of data cap, which has kind of been, I think we use these things interchangeably, but in this design, what we're saying quality usage of data cap is on a granular analysis of how data cap is used in deals, whereas compliant deal making is about, are the deals distributed? Are you serving retrievals? It's more about, are you doing what you said you will do? Versus quality usage of data cap is about, a more complex set of metrics, which may include things like the rate of data cap use, or how or things like taking the verified deal duration standard. So that is to say that what is the standard deviation of duration of verified deals, and so they are more granular and complex. And so if you were to bring all these things together, we can come up with again kind of simplification. So reputation can be high, medium, low, based on the trust and risk metrics of a client. And today we are only measuring trust. I think if you go to quality.datacaps.io, you can find the different trust levels of the client. But I think that measuring risk is equally important to address biases that we see today in initial allocations for clients, especially the ones who have no existent reputation within the system. And so I just want to kind of give an example of what this might look like if we were to implement it. So let's say a client comes in, applies for data cap, and discloses the SPs, notaries, data preparers, or allocators they plan to work with. They input their client ID, and they would provide this list. So we are taking a big dependency on the client ID here. And then essentially, based on so essentially, we'll be looking at this specific metric here, which is the collaboration assessment, because a client who's coming in new, they don't have any usage of data cap, they don't have any on-chain footprint of compliant deal making. So only based on who they plan to work with, we will assign them X amount of data cap. So in this case, let's say that the client, client said that they will work with these 4 or 5 SPs, they will work with 2 or 3 data preparers. They plan to work with these allocators and these notaries. And I can go into how we come up with the initial list of high risk and low risk SPs, but they will receive, in this case, 50 TIBs of data cap. They can either accept it or they can edit their collaborators to get a different amount if they want to try things out. Client starts to earn trust by using the data cap, through compliant deal making and through quality usage data cap. The client IDs in this case are assigned on-chain reputation scores based on their on-chain behavior. So everything here is on-chain. We are pretty much getting rid of everything that's happening off-chain. And the reputation category and score can be publicly accessible. So this is kind of to answer Hide's question. If you were to implement this, we can have a reputation dashboard for clients, and then We can also borrow like the initial list of, one of the ways when we can come with a more objective way for reputation of SPs is by leveraging some of the work that Caro is doing with the reputation DAO. So we essentially what we do is take the reputation of the SPs. I have this graph here. So one way to do this is to strip SPs and notaries from high reputation clients and low reputation clients, which we have today. So we have that today, right, based on compliance. This is a one-time thing. We do a proxy exercise where we come up with a list of high reputation SPs, and then we do a one-to-one mapping of SPs like reputation to risk, and then like this design kind of like starts to work. And so once you have the reputation metrics, you can start to see that the future transfer data cap are now completely automated based on corresponding on-chain reputation scores. And human intervention is only needed really when the tooling breaks or something happens where someone needs to manually sign. And so in this design, some of the ways to measure the success of this design is how much data cap is being monitored by high reputation clients, how many clients are moving from low reputation to high reputation clients, how quickly are clients moving from those categories, and how many and how long do clients take, how many or how long clients stay in a certain reputation level. And I think those are way better metrics, in my opinion, to assess the success of like Phil Plus broadly, but also the success of how data cap is used up in the program. So
So
just yeah, go ahead.
all the outcomes of this will be automated by a bot who has the supervision on stopping or allowing, or there won't be an intervention of a human notary or a human SP or someone in the public who needs to get the results from the dashboard, from the bots,
No,
and then say stop or go. That will
no.
be automated.
Exactly. So we would the
Great.
work we would need to do is I think this ties into Simon's design. So one thing we can do is literally take this everywhere you see client on this presentation. You can just change the allocator. And so one thing you can do is each allocator now has a certain trust score and a certain risk score. And so they are now responsible to maintain a high reputation in this system, which automatically, flows to the client. So in this case, if Banyan were to have a high reputation and get like that, like let's say they wanted 1 exabyte of data cap, and we can have a condition where we can say if Banyan has been a high reputation client, a high reputation allocator for over 6 months, they might be able to and like have categories such as it's been 6 months that they've remained a high reputation client. I would argue that that's a solid reason for us to consider that they might qualify for a very large chunk. And if they fall into like a medium reputation category, then I think we take away. So that's the other thing. I don't think like we'll just give them like 1 exabyte. We'll like it's kind of like a VC model, right, where we allocate them 1 exabyte, but they've only gotten 200 pips so far, and so they need to maintain themselves in the high reputation category. And there are many ways to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, so can you explain so I've worked with clients directly. Anjor, I work on data onboarding. Right now, I'm engineering manager for Spade, Singularity, and other data onboarding tools.
You don't have
But-
to do that in here.
Okay, fine.
We're not.
But a few months, I guess this is relevant context, but a few months ago, I was working directly with a few clients to onboard their data to Filecoin. These are clients who know nothing about the ecosystem, who don't know any SPs, who don't know what Phil Plus is or what a notary is,
Yeah.
and it's actual valuable data like the Solana chain.
Exactly. So I think
How
this is
do we
yeah.
deal
So
with
that's
that?
kind of like where I was going for. I think my hot take is most large clients would either want an allocator or reputation management as a service provider. So like, I think this system is more objective, and I think someone else is likely going to do the reputation management. At the end of the day, the client is getting a big subsidy. If the client isn't willing to put in this work, which I would argue like isn't as complicated anyways, But it does take some time to understand what trust means, what risk means. I think we need to start thinking about, reputation management, management service providers or allocators taking on this work. As and Galen was mentioning, this could be a very good justification for them charging a decent fee to being like, hey, I understand this game theoretic system. I'm gonna get you whatever like amount of data cap you need, and I will take care of your compliance metrics and risk metrics. That's how I'm conceiving it right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like to that point, if you are a small scale developer with a small amount of data and you show up into the system, it would be great for you to land into a pathway that's pretty easy. That's like, again, sign in with GitHub, learn about Filecoin docs. Here's a little bit. If we can have a list of things that you could trade for us, here's a third party KYC service. Go fill out some of this. You have traded a little bit of streamlined KYC. We give you a little bit of data cap, and then we introduce you to some onboarding partners. And then you say, oh, I worked with these people. This was my client ID. We can track that downstream. My reputation stays at a threshold amount. I continue to get a small trickle of data cap as I'm using it. But then if suddenly there's like a big spike in all my data cap allocation and it all went to one place, like that could potentially be a flag that in a reputation system would be like, hey, this person has like some new behavior pattern that might be out of scope. We need to pause and have an intervention. Maybe a human in the loop needs to come in and unblock that.
So maybe I'm getting a bit into details here, but when I started onboarding Triton data, like Hide is working with Triton on onboarding their data, they're very slow at the rate of onboarding because they are testing things. They're making sure everything is working. They're making sure that the data is prepared in a way that makes sense for them, which means there is going to be, like, there's predictably going to be a point when there's going to be a spike.
Right. It should like there should be punctuated equilibrium in these things, but they should be able to be predictable, reasonable, and accountable.
Yeah.
So if there's an automated tool that says this is the threshold, and we expect certain behavior patterns on a timescale within a threshold, and that happened, great. Or if that consistently that threshold is wrong, and all of the clients at a certain band are getting paused in an automated intervention way, then our threshold may be off, right? Like,
Yeah.
we don't want human in the loop every time, but if we suddenly get 500 clients that are all flying right below the threshold, that might be a flag as well. Maybe our thresholds are too low. Like, so can we use subgraph analysis to say, out of those brand new 500 clients, are they all following a same pattern of these variables using subgraph chain monitoring and saying, oh, these all fit into a similar band. Who are they? Wait, we actually don't have great information about who they are. This is where we're trying to balance that. Like, how do we scale to do this automation and give a little bit of trust and then learn across the full pattern and then say, this is where we need to tweak these things. And I think to your point of like, is this going to be automated? Like, what's the intervention mechanism? The place that we want to go in the next election cycle is we have taken on the burden of running this LDN thing. That was a proposal. There was a proposal that said, should we have a large data set notary? It's like took 3 versions to get to, well, it used to be, let's have multiple of these notaries that everyone had to raise their hand, and we put 7 signers and the threshold was 4, and it was a huge overhead, right? We are at the current state of it, and there are parts of it that work and parts don't, but the governance team is managing most of that overhead. So in this next election cycle, the governance team is going to apply to say, this is the new version 4 of the large dataset notary, and it's going to have this compliance structure and this kind of automation.
Yeah.
This is what the notary is, and if it's not going to be, oh, well, one person said this and another person said that, and one notary, if there is a dispute, if this is out of compliance, do not give more data cap. That's the allocation strategy of that multi-sig allocator.
Yeah.
We don't have to then fight about, all of these issues of, well, one person says, oh, I signed it anyway, and another, because it's baked into the design of the allocator.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we are improving and learning as we go. That was the whole meaning and stand of the last year. One burning question, separate from the current sheet, from me to everybody in the room here, is We are super focused on fixing the current status quo and improving to the next iterations, which is great. One big gap remains in my questioning is, what are we going to do with the past? Because we can't just fix what happened 6 months ago, but we are in a period since November last year, if I'm correct, that the deals can potentially be lengthened up until 5 years.
I think
Eventually
that
forever.
requires,
My question is, knowing the amount of non-usable garbage data on chain right now, we want to filter that out to make it all filled with real usable data. Are we going to be forever on chain with the garbage we
so
know?
currently there's 1 exabyte of verified data on chain, right? 1 exabyte,
Yeah.
a little bit more than 1
A little bit
exabyte
more,
of verified
1 point,
data.
yeah, yeah.
So the question is like, what are we going to do with that 1 exabyte of verified data, right? So I think there's,
Well, you call it verified data, but we know that most of it is just there
no,
to make
it's
the miner.
verified data. It
Yes.
has data cap. On chain,
Technically correct, yeah.
yes, right.
Yeah.
We are talking technics.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It is technically verified data according to a chain state protocol,
Correct.
right? Rules as written, that's what it is. Subjectively, we have differing opinions and different people in the community will argue different things about how much of it or what falls or what would, rules as written, that's what it is. So the question is, what do we do with that? Do we need a new rule to say, if X, Y, and Z is proven, then we will go back to a sector and change its state? That would be a new FIP. That would require someone to author that FIP, to explain how it would be used. That would be a new tool, it would be a new hammer, and you would have to explain how does the hammer work and when do we swing it?
Well-
And so to like, I am more interested and my focus has been more on moving forward, but I understand
Yeah.
that we have this amount of
Questionable
Debt.
data, let's say it that way.
So another question is, like, that you mentioned, and this is my question to you, is like, for extensions, and what I don't know is if someone has a sector that is coming to an end and they want to extend that, if it requires new data cap and new collateral.
Why don't we know that yet?
I don't know,
Does anyone know?
We can extend data cap from the client side.
I thought that when you extended a deal, it needed new data cap.
Does it require, does the data cap itself expire off the sector and does it need new data cap?
I can
Or can it
clarify that.
reuse the data
Yeah.
cap?
So if it's the original client that posted the allocation claim to the allocation tables, the allocation table was created only in the FIP that was last November.
Yeah.
So for deals that were created after last November, if the originating client that proposed the deal and posted the allocation wants to extend the claim term to claim term max of 5 years, it does not require new data cap.
Okay, and
If
this-
another client wants to extend claim term for an existing claim, it does require a new data cap. And if a new deal needs to be made, regardless of the client address, it does require a new data cap.
And if we find a certain specific client who is ought to have abused the system and is flagged, is there any way to limit that certain client ID
Yeah,
from doing
so-
that exercise?
So one way we can do that is by, if we were to implement this, we can use this collaboration piece, and so use like the work that Matt presented, and retroactively have lower reputation scores for all those client IDs, right? And then if that client were to use a new client ID, then they will have to start from scratch. So we are retroactively, we can make a proposal and say, can we want to do this retroactively? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's yes and no. So current rules as written, if the same client ID shows up, current rules state there is not a social check
No.
or a new data cap requirement. So that would be a FIP to change the current rules as written that would say some new mechanism for the original client wanting to extend the deal would either require new data cap, which means they would have to come back to whatever the current system is, and that's where us moving forward with this, we would then be able to say, well, your past reputation was bad, we're not giving you new data cap.
Yeah.
But that is not the current rule. So it would require a change to say, to extend a sector, the original client would have to go get a new amount, a new tranche of
Yes.
commensurate data cap.
But the question
Or
then-
that we would have to write a rule that says like, every time that client wants to extend it, go check some.
The question
thing.
boils down to, do we prefer the locked up fill to quality data on chain? Because expiring a lot of stuff where we know it's potentially not the data that we want or abusively stored, we also going to release the locked up fill. And that's a balance that
Yeah.
the community has to make. I think a lot of people outside of the Filecoin Plus ecosystem always prefer more locked up.
Yep.
Well, regardless quality or volume or minor revenue or anything like that. So
Personally, my
it's a
personal
difficult,
opinion
difficult
is
one.
I think that if we go down that road, the way that I would rather solve it is that they have to come back under the new rules, whatever the new current rules are, and get new data cap. We're going to have to then fight the fight of proving whether or not their previous behavior was good or bad. And that becomes a subjective thing. I would prefer that, but I don't know that that is where the community or like where the direction is going to go. So I could see a group saying, if someone shows up, they want to extend the sector, they want the old state. When I got data cap, it was fine. I applied under previous rules and was approved, so I should be able to extend it. I think how do you win?
We don't.
How do you win any FIP fight? Like I think this is where you go to say, if it is an extension, then it needs to fall under whatever the current market rules, the current rules of the game should be.
But if we are spending so much effort and time to making this better and better and better while not being able to improve the huge amount of data now, then the weight of all these improvements are not that.
Well,
I don't
I
think
disagree
so.
with that.
I
Because
disagree
like,
with that, yeah.
if we're still seeing an increasing onboarding rate, then the improvements that we are making, like, I think it's also just a question of like, where do we want to fight?
Yeah.
Do I want to fight historical battles with people that are going to show up and have to do past audit logs and go look through, or do I want the tooling to be better on the front end? And I would rather focus on looking forward and decreasing the bad behavior moving forward.
I agree. But there are certain groups where we can physically see, hey, there's like 500 peppy bytes on these similar miners, which is unretrievable, and we don't know what it is, and not giving them the same standards as everybody.
So what
who's joining
I
now.
would rather do in that case then is still do the same thing of set reputation scoring. Like if we can build these high confidence reputation scores, those can be retroactive.
But
right?
they can just lengthen. They don't care about reputation.
Fine. There's
Well,
a race,
not
then,
for the-
then they race to the bottom, and like that
is true.
That is a burden, but that is a like long term. That burden should get better and go away. And so it is your point of like,
Yeah.
do I want to fight to take what is already on the network and shrink it with higher confidence, or do I want to invest in moving forward? Because like we have to prioritize things, and I am driving in the direction of like prioritizing moving forward in the hopes that we are like doing it incrementally better
Yeah, I
each
agree.
time. And yeah, if a community member wants to like push something that says for sector extensions, you must reapply through whatever the current process is at whatever time, I would support that because I think that is in keeping with the philosophy that the program should get better at understanding the use cases. And if you come back with seemingly the same data, it may not still fit into the use case. So my argument would be that it should need a new tranche.
Exactly what we're doing with 922 right now when people want to reopen their LDNs. It's technically the same, yeah.
Sorry, but I would like to bring the conversation back to the client side a bit again, because
No.
that's the world I know and that's who I work with. I see where this is a comment not on the design of the system. I see where this is coming from. I see why this is needed. The people working on this and the people involved in these discussions are much closer to the SP world and understand the SP pain points, complaints, and issues a lot more. They don't necessarily know the client side of the world that much. So please don't discount the level of pain a new client is going to experience dealing with this system. I ack your comment that it's a little bit of thing. The point is, I don't actually think it's the level of complexity. When a new client talks to me, they say, "Oh, okay, I want to put data on Filecoin.
Yeah.
Whom do I pay and how much?"
Yeah.
It's not like there's no when I talk to them about Phil Plus. they
So,
get
so
confused.
in this system, you say you pay this onboarding partner, and that's the client ID. The onboarding partner is managing the client.
So it could be the reputation, like the allocator ID.
I'm not again. I'm speaking at a slightly higher level.
Yeah.
My comment is like be aware that the clients know nothing about this. They're going to come from a very different perspective and
Yeah.
point of view, and you're going to have to build things that could be documentation, that could be people, that could be processes that meet the clients where they are. Otherwise, the barrier to entry into this ecosystem for clients with actual data is too high.
Yes, I agree with you, and I think that's totally true. I think I would argue that the system today is even more harder. I think compared to like the system is not hoping to improve the client UX. Definitely, I think it was mostly addressed like aiming to address the non-compliance. I would say though, I think so. There's 2 points I would say. One is I think doing that through the allocator design could be one way to do it. And I think the second point is I think that if we are able to create reputation, like I do think like that's why I had this comment here. I don't think most clients will ever care about this, right? So that's why I think we need to imagine or like try to fund like new types of services. And I think to the point that if someone wants to use Phil Plus, right, because you are getting a big benefit, you are getting a big discount. So there is either so far what we've talked about is either you have to give up a lot of information. So there could be an allocator where you don't have to use any of this, right? You just do a bunch of KYC, KYB, share a bunch of information. Maybe that, a certain client is okay with that, right? But a certain client is like, no, private data, I'm never ever going to share any information. While I think that this design is like a on-chain native reputation mechanism that they can kind of come in and say, okay, you can remain completely anonymous, but then we as as Falcon Plus need a way to assess your reputation. Now the client can choose to manage, have someone within their company to understand this whole shabal, or they can hire a reputation manager or pay an allocator a high service fee to do that. But I do think that given that we are just like adding the complexity of Phil Plus, this added complexity is kind of like part of like what comes in the plate. That's kind of how I think about it. Yeah.
Doing a quick time check. It is 3:30.
I have a technical question.
Yeah, I'll give
Very
you.
short.
I'll give you time for the quick question. I just want to like process check.
I missed the beginning of the talk. How much is the risk that the system basically suicides itself? How interconnected is the reputation of the participants? Let's say a data center burns down, a lot of miners go out of business, and the data is gone. That will affect the client score or the client's reputation, I assume. That propagates to all the other deals he was doing. Basically, can there be a back-propagating thing to the bottom by people actively acting malicious on the system to taint reputation, and then that propagates through the whole system?
Yeah.
Even people have
Theoretically, yes. I
nothing
would also
to do with
argue
actual
that
fault.
if you were a client and you claimed to have done a lot of distributed deal making, and then all of that deal making was at one physical location, then maybe your reputation should have taken a hit because the onus is also on you.
But does
to be-
it propagate to the next client who stored with the same SPs? what happens if we
right,
find a
well,
bad?
that's what I'm saying, is if the next client also did the same behavior, then I would argue that that client should
But it's an
equally have a
automated
lower
system.
reputation.
So what I want to know is, if
So I think, so
can reputation change without the actual entity doing anything? Can my client score go down because another client behaved badly or his miners behaved badly? Or is the system protected against
yeah,
that?
that's a good question. So I didn't have it here, but the client risk score, as it's presented here, is a weighted average. I think I would imagine this to be a weighted average of the collaboration assessment, right? Which is on the first ever allocation is based on your collaboration, and then as you start to use data cap, it's based on the quality usage plus compliance, right? And so to address that risk that you're mentioning, what we could design for is, let's say, once the client has been in the CID, the client ID has been on chain for more than 2 weeks or has made some deals, we reduce the weight of the collaboration assessment to, let's say it was 0.4 and 0.6, reduce that to 0. Pretty much negligible. We can even have 0, and it's only risk is only indexed on quality use of data cap, and then client trust is, of course, compliance. So in that manner, reputation will be exclusive and will not be impacted by other factors.
We need to take care of this because everyone
Yeah.
has an interest, an active interest in everyone else failing
Yeah.
in this.
Awesome, thank you. I know.